uh, I would always be affected not by my intellect, but by my by the fun of it. I didn't do it because I was smart. I did it because I was greedy in a way.
Well, that's an interesting point. I don't know, many of us really, at least in the early days of comics, enjoyed themselves the way the young guys producing are doing today. I don't know how much you see that, but there's an enthusiasm that was absent in the old studios. Maybe
It comes and it goes. I think the system, however it comes about, seems to be where you're doing 1 minute or 1 year you're doing it for artistic, almost artistic, if I can apply the term to comics.
hope
You-
he's doing.
Right. I know that you've tried to move into the artistic approach, but everybody is doing an artistic approach 1 year or for one branch of the tree, and then they slowly start losing the blushes off the rose, and they start turning to hack devices, and they start hacking. And all around me, I've seen it again and again over the years. You come in with creative excitement of a new trend, and you want to do exciting things, and you slowly, the business gets bored for whatever reason, and you stop doing exciting things, and you start hacking for money, and you start setting up systems, or the artists start setting, I'm expressing it in the worst kind of language, but the artists turn from doing stuff that will give them a place in the world, a spot on the map, and they turn to hack. And maybe it's because certain forces keep spinning on the globe keeps spinning, and there's a rhythm that makes it go that way. I don't have the faintest notion what I'm talking about.
I
I
probably
just want to
was
say that what he's saying it has great validity, excuse me for more, is because one of the most able editors that I know in the field has been Harvey. He has been really consciously, intellectually responsible for editing or bringing together and discovering, I hate to use the word discovering because it's really unfair, but recognizing and establishing, identifying good new talent is something that Harvey has been very skilled at over the years. And so what he said, I was nodding, it meant a lot to me. I'm sorry.
That's
It's
all right.
true.
That's probably I'm probably one of the most ignorant people in this room. I grew up reading comic
Oh, my
books,
shock.
all kinds, but now I've got a son the past couple of years, and it just blows my mind, you know, what's underneath the comic books, what's going on in the thing. But I'm fascinated with your connection with Mad, or Mad is your baby, I guess. Can you
Not my baby.
Can,
somebody else's baby. The guy who's making the money is elsewhere.
yeah, it is, yeah. Can you talk about MAD for a little bit, how it came about? Just
Yeah,
about it.
well, it basically there's no special story. We had to change our direction because there was a congressional investigation and pressure. And the trend that we'd been working with was beginning to peter out. It wasn't selling copies. And simple as that. We had to go elsewhere to make a living.
Did it just pop in your mind one day to do those crazy things? I used to read it all the time. It was one of my
Well-
favorite things when it first came out, I guess. And, it was new.
Well, we
Curious
had
how-
a story conference, a magazine conference. I invited Bill Gaines to dinner with Al Feldstein, and I said, how's about this? How's about that? How's about the other thing? And how's about MAD? A title. And that's the way it started. Gaines said yes, and he had the money. He turned on the faucet, and the rest is history. Yeah.
Censorship is becoming real interesting again right now. And I'm kind of curious as to y'all's reaction to limits that are being set on artistic creation, whether they're over the line, under the line, should there be a line. It's affected your industry considerably.
Well, I'll answer that. Censorship has always been around us. Even the guy that came in from the field in the caves, the Neanderthal, came in and said, I'm going to draw this guy attacking this mastodon. I'm sure somebody in the cave said, well, let's not have any frontal nudity now. Or side view. I mean. It's always been around.
Caveman said, watch out for the First Amendment.
Yeah, I have certain rights. But it's always been here. I think the thing you've got to face always when you're producing material for public consumption is the two levels of censorship. One is the censorship of the editor, through whom you must go to reach that public. And the second area is the censorship of your own conscience, which really is tied to your own identity. I don't want to be doing the kinds of things that you might find in Hustler magazine. I couldn't see myself doing something for Hustler magazine, not because I'm prudish or that I'm worried about censorship from other sides. I have no problem with that, about censorship, if I felt that was right. But inside me, I felt I was making no contribution to the body of literature. They didn't want me to identify with it. But historically, censorship really is an effort by a social group to protect somebody against other ideas, against my ideas or your ideas. And it'll never survive, it'll never fly. And I think this whole business of the National Endowment of the Arts with this business, my first reaction is a plague on both their houses. I have trouble with the guy who will take a statue of Christ and stick it in a bottle of urine. I mean, why? Why are you doing this? I mean, sure you've got freedom, but it doesn't give you the freedom to spit on the sidewalk. I mean, just because it's... On the other hand, I object to the National Endowment of the Arts who set up a set of criteria. I defy anybody to give us a definition of pornography. I think a man shooting another man on television is pornographic in its way. is obscene, it's an obscenity, and yet we permit it.
That brings an interesting point about the recent trends about violence in okay comics, but sex not. Do you have any comments upon that?
Say that again, loud.
The recent trend in comics that the extreme violence in comics and how it's okay, but sex is very much taboo in comics.
Is it?
Yeah.
Looked around?
Huh?
Have you looked around lately?
Not to the extent that more than violence is. Every time you read about people complaining about comics, they're always talking about how bad the sex is, how bad sex is, but violence is never mentioned.
Well, there is something to be said about
Wolverine
it.
slices people up every issue, but
Well, all right, I'll just say something, and I'll let Harvey talk about this. But I feel quite strongly about it, because I'm addressing it all the time with students in New York, and I spend a lot of time with it. When you're doing newspaper work, like The Spirit is appearing in newspapers, you're addressing this kind of censorship a lot more, confronting it, not much more violently than you would in the case of a magazine, where a guy can do a Mad magazine and probably have no one else to deal with but a newsstand distributor. But we had a couple hundred editors to deal with every week. I believe that there is something that should be said to the people who create highly violent, highly bigoted, highly sexual stories and things in comic magazines. And that is a fact that by doing so, you're helping establish cultural norms. And in doing so, you should be careful about what it is you're doing. Well, one of the things that I've had trouble with is a thing where a self-appointed superhero goes out and acts as judge and jury and hangman, decides who is bad and kills him, and destroys him. That to me puts a responsibility on the person who's creating it, because the person who's creating it has to understand that thousands and thousands of copies of what he's done is going out into the public, and he's pouring into the mainstream or in the cultural reservoir, whatever poetic word you want to use here, a concept of acceptable behavior that he should be careful about doing. It has to do with sex too, the relationship between men and women, which we have carefully nurtured over centuries, is endangered when you suddenly begin portraying women as nothing more than a sexually gratifying object, or portraying men as totally dominant and the owners of rights over the bodies of women, without question. And I guess I'm beginning to sound like somebody from the right, from the far right. But anyway, I just felt it was necessary to point out, because that's something that's been disturbing me a lot in the last few years.
Well, isn't it the editors and publishers?
Unfortunately,
Job to
it
screen it,
starts with the
try to
writer.
straighten
It
it.
starts with the writer who thinks, or the artist who thinks that that's going to sell. The editor can say, no, I won't publish this, but the editor ain't going to say that, because his publisher, who's in deadly pursuit of the marketplace, says to the editor, unless you turn out books for me that are going to sell, you ain't going to have a job next week. So you've got to change. Harv, you're looking at me. Disagree?
Well,